Hey dudes, it's Lerald. This video is about a very simple, very rewarding farm strategy that I've been using over the last couple of days. It's a slightly tweaked version of the strongest strategy that we came up with in Settlers League, and the Scarabs that we use for it were actually buffed by quite a bit with Mercenary League. It's also like a 99% cringe-free strategy. I don't want to say 100% cringe-free, because tier 17 map rolling is still a little bit cringe, but there are no risk scarabs, there's no dual boxing blight and like causing your UI to flicker and making the game unplayable. There's no chasing abyss cracks around the map all day. It's just open the map, kill, 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 and then you get a bunch of scarabs and currency. Awesome. So let's get into it, but first join our Discord in the description and say hi to me and Sunset. Alright, so in terms of what we're doing in the strategy, we are just simply killing lots and lots and lots of magic packs in tier 17 maps. Now these are not the terrifying magic packs from the Divination Scarab of Plenty strategy. I really like that strategy a lot. I like how rewarding it is for the relatively low price of the scarabs, but the hazards that those things leave behind are quite deadly. These guys are not, they're just regular magic monsters. So the main thing we're going for is tons of scarabs. You know, that's kind of job number one here, but we're also getting plenty of good old-fashioned raw currency drops as well. I typically find multiple Valdos puzzle boxes or raw divines or reliquary keys or like high-value scarabs, containment scarabs, that kind of thing, in each map. Something that makes the loot filter go ting. I usually get several of those tings per map. You also get tons of gold doing this strategy. I think in the span of doing like a little over an hour last night right before bed, I pulled in like 1.2 million gold, something like that. So that's a nice little benefit as well. So in terms of profits, I did several rounds of testing and I made over 3 divines per map, and these maps were relatively quick for tier 17s. We're spending about 2/3 of a divine per map, including the cost of the tier 17, and I was clearing these maps in like 6 minutes each, being a little like liberal with that estimate, right? Like on the high end. So I would say 10 maps per hour is very doable. RNG is going to be RNG, but that means like 25 to 30 divines per hour, I think is reasonably attainable. All right, so let's talk a little bit about map rolling, and I'll just pull out one of my fortress maps here. So I am doing fortress as my map of choice. I have a full 144 dump tab there of them, but let's just pull one of these out and kind of talk a little bit about them. So tier 17 maps come with tier 17 mods, and tier 17 mods are the ones that say tier 1 at the end of the mod title. You know, magnifying tier 1, stalwart tier 1, that would all be a bunch of tier 17 mods here, and some of these could be quite bad. Awakener's Desolation's pretty irritating. You know, a lot of really irritating tier 17 mods, right? I don't think I need to talk too much about that. But they also come with the possibility of increased item rarity or pack size or more maps, more currency, more scarabs. So what we're looking for is a combination of more currency and more scarabs. And really what we're looking for is more scarabs, unless we have a map that has a lot more currency, like this one with 154% or this one with 179%. You know, huge increases to currency are cool. But we are trying to mostly min-max our scarab drops out of this. So like this map, for example, 100% more maps. If I wanted to do Corrupted 8 mod map farming, I might hang on to this. But if I wanted to do scarab farming, I would roll it. And what I'm looking for in terms of the maps that I'm going for is at least 100% more scarabs or 100% more currency, or a combination of more scarabs and more currency that puts me in the like 160 range. So like 80% of each. I think that's kind of enough to justify running. So there are Maven Chisels for currency and for scarabs. The currency ones are quite expensive. They're like 75 chaos each. So I have just been selling those. I think they're basically priced for like group play. So you can use those if you want. If you had a really, really juicy, like 179% more currency and you wanted to gamble, maybe you could try it, but you would basically be needing to make like couple divines in that map in order to make that currency back, which may happen. You never know. The scarab chisels are quite a lot less expensive. Like if we just go to talk to our boy Faustus here, they're like 25, 30 chaos each, not nearly as bad. But again, just to double check, the price of Avarice chisels right now, it's like, yeah, 70, 75 chaos each. So pretty expensive. So I think you can get away with generic chiseling for all of this if you want. Certainly for currency, I think it's probably a better like gamble to not use the chisels, the avarice chisels, but for Scarabs, like absolutely I think it's worth it. And you can see like here, instead of this going up just to like 20% more Scarabs, I'm getting 25% more for each chisel, right? This has a multiplicative effect with the amount of more Scarabs that's being added. It's really quite impressive. And then this will all get multiplied by all of the more map mod effect on your maps. So this is like step one of map rolling. It's just like looking and making sure, can I do all these mods? I might get killed. The combination of extra Physis Lightning and minus max all res, I might get killed, but like I'm willing to take that risk. So that's step one, and then step two, very simple, is just to make sure that you slap at least one DELI orb onto all of your tier 17 maps. This has a kind of counterintuitive effect of making the map boss significantly easier, because they will be affected by a delirium buff. They will like stop attacking repeatedly and cast delirium skills, and the delirium skills are way less dangerous than anything that tier 17 map bosses do. So like even if you're just trying to complete tier 17s, like at the start of a league or start of a character or whatever, and you just want to make it easier, counterintuitively, putting delirium onto the map makes a tier 17 easier. Yeah. So that's pretty much it in terms of map rolling, right? Like there's not a lot you could do to map roll in tier 17s. You just hit them with chaos until you're happy with the mods and the reward structure from them. And then like for these expensive currency ones, I would just slap them with regular chisels, get like, you know, an extra 20 quality out of that, 20 quantity, like that'll work. And then for these ones that have a very nice high Scarab roll, I'll use the Maven Chisel of Scarabs. I think that's pretty cost effective. All right, so obviously you can see the Scarabs I have pulled out here, and those would be Horn Scarab of Bloodlines. This puts 150% increased magic monsters into your maps. Basically, it converts a bunch of the normal packs into magic packs. And then I also like Horn Scarab of Nemesis. The reason for this being that we are hunting lots of Scarabs, and this interacts very nicely with, I can never remember the name, but this thing here, Amplified Artifacts, this bonus, 50% increased chance to drop Scarabs per monster modifier, affecting each rare. Monster modifiers also just give rare monsters like more quantity and rarity, and so this will cause them to have like a lot more loot explosions, tons of Scarabs, tons of currency, you know, all the stuff you want. Mage Bloods, sure, why not? And then the other thing that we're doing is we're using 2 Monstrous Lineage Scarabs. This is part of why this strategy was buffed from Settlers League. You used to only have a limit of 1 of these, now you can have 2, so 80% magic pack size to go with the amount of like pack size that we're getting on some of these maps being, you know, upwards of 50%, and then that's all getting multiplied by the map mod effect that we're getting out of the tree, which is literally all the increased map mod effect we could possibly get. So you're gonna have like 100% plus map pack size on a lot of these maps, if not more. That's another thing you hypothetically could use if you have a bunch of these chisels of proliferation. Again, not cheap, 37 chaos each, something like that. So I probably wouldn't use these, but you could hypothetically use these on ones that have like a good combo currency and Scarab roll. Like this one, you could use, those proliferation Scarabs instead and just try and get more packs. Again, something I think I would probably try to use in like a different strategy, or just simply sell to people who are doing group play. And then the last Scarab, something that we've changed from the old version of the strategy, is the Domination Scarab of Evolution. This was buffed in Merc League. It just went from 5% chance to upgrade monsters you kill to the next rarity tier, from normal to magic to rare. It was bumped up to 10% with this league, so like it's just a really, really, really good way to add a ton of extra monsters into your maps very easily. Just by being a shrine, it adds at least 1 magic pack. And then, potentially a lot more. So I'm just using one of these. I don't think it's worth it to like drop the Nemesis or one of the Monstrous Lineages in order to get a second evolution shrine, but it is nice to have 1 evolution shrine in there. If you can get that early in the map, you can turn a lot of monsters into a ton of monsters. One question I just want to go ahead and kind of get out in front of an answer is whether you could do this in tier 16.5s or tier 16s. And I think for tier 16s, I think the cost of the Horn Scarab of Bloodlines is just right out, right? Like it's just too much. You could do something similar. I mean, I've done more or less the same strategy, but without the more Scarab and more currency multipliers that you get in tier 17s and tier 16.5s, I just don't think this will be all that great in tier 16s. In tier 16.5s, I've done it. I've kind of had mixed results. I've had very, very good success sometimes, and, you know, sometimes it's not as good. And I think that really just boils down to there not being as many monsters on average in a tier 16.5 map as there are in a tier 17, so it's going to be a little bit less consistent, and considering the high cost of the Bloodline Scarab, you know, you may want to use it, or you may want to just do this in tier 17s. I think either way could be really good. A well-rolled tier 16.5 will be awesome. I've done some that had like 400% more Scarabs, and those absolutely rocked. But, you know, kind of a mixed bag. All right, so now let's go ahead and jump into the Atlas passive tree that I'm running here. And as you can see, it's incredibly generic. Like, it's the most generic Scarab-oriented Atlas passive tree you could possibly use. I like shrines, so I'm using shrines on the map device. I'm using every single one of the shrine nodes. You'll see that I did drop one Scarab chance node here in order to afford an extra shrine duration node. And I've also made a change in my build, just a very slight one. Not that you have to do it, but I do recommend it if you like shrines, and that is simply to add Runegraft to the warp in anywhere. It's just really good. It applies to all buffs on you and all debuffs on you. Buffs expiring slower, 30%, basically 30% more uptime, roughly, on shrines, so they last a long time, and then debuffs expiring faster is usually good, but there are a couple of debuffs where that is bad. I think the most, like, conspicuous one that is kind of bad is the drowning orbs in tier 17 and tier 16.5 maps will expire faster and kill you quicker. So you have, like, instead of 3 seconds or 4 seconds or whatever it is, you have like 2 or 3 to get out of those. So beware of that. Otherwise, this is really good. It even applies to the really awful tier 17 debuff. I don't think it's on any of these, but it might be the affix on the maps that makes it so that you don't do damage for 3 seconds out of every 10. That gets scaled down to like every 2.25 seconds, thanks to Runegraft or the Warp. So that is pretty cool. So getting back to the passive tree, as you can see, we're just taking like everything we possibly can to get more Scarabs. I want ambush Scarabs, I want cartography Scarabs. Doing all of that, it's very, very generic. All the map mod effect we can possibly get in the tree as well. The outer wheel of quantity, yes, but the inner wheel of quantity with the rarity, no. I just didn't feel like, having compared running like 6 Scarab nodes, you know, 18% increased chance to get Scarabs versus 3% quantity and 15 rarity, I felt that the Scarabs were better because of everything else that we're doing to min-max the value of Scarabs in this strategy. You know, pack size for Meter of Worlds is obviously good, and then I like the map item memory influence chance. Like, I like the 16.5 maps a lot, so I'm taking that. And then because we're using a DELI orb, no investment in a delirium at all. We're just using that for like quantity and extra guys. That's pretty much it. Now, one thing that is kind of conspicuous here is none of the blocker nodes for like map league mechanics that don't have good Scarabs, like Legion or Expedition or Abyss or Breach or any of those. Ritual's kind of like not the greatest one to block because it does just add extra guys in when it spawns, but they're very annoying and they do have a tendency to kill you, so I kind of like to block Ritual out just because I don't want to die. The reason that I haven't chosen to block any of these is somebody made a Reddit post recently with some decently convincing results that showed that basically by blocking these, they weren't actually getting more Scarabs, they were just simply making these not drop. Now, that's very anecdotal, you know, they didn't farm like 100 million maps in order to test that out, but I just said like, you know, that honestly, that convinced me. So I tried doing this like with and without a little myself, and I didn't really feel like I got more, you know, ambush Scarabs of containment or anything like that by blocking, you know, the ability to get like expedition Scarabs. And I saved a bunch more points to be able to put into other stuff like shrines and more Scarabs, and that's pretty much it, right? So that's the tree, super basic. It's a really just a very generically useful tree. You can kind of, if you wanted to strip points away from the various Scarab allocations and put them into something else, you could, but I feel like you know, it's kind of worth just doing the one thing really, really efficiently, which is killing guys and making them drop Scarabs, and that's it. All right, so in terms of what we actually do in the maps, just about the least surprising thing of all time, right? We run Fortress map. That's my preferred tier 17. You can do other tier 17s if you like. I don't know why you would like any of them more than Fortress. Fortress is just better than all of the rest of the tier 17 maps in terms of the layout, in terms of the boss not being super slow and having a bunch of immunity phases, in terms of there are like these little chests or little barrels around Fortress map that like to just throw out extra currency, and they seem to be affected by the more currency and more Scarab modifier, the tier 17 bonus. So, like Fortress stands head and shoulders above the other 4. The only other thing that I really do in the map is if I can find the evolution shrine earlier rather than later, I definitely want to like rush for that. And then if I find the boss, you can't really boss rush in tier 17. It's not really. I certainly don't think it's worth the time spent trying to, but like if I run across the boss, I'll set a portal and go in and kill him, and then continue to kill the rest of the monsters in the map. Just try and... Really what we're trying to do is focus on player modifiers out of the Eldritch Altars. Like if I were doing this at tier 16.5s, and I have, then I would boss rush in those situations and try to go for the player mods that give you like Scarab duplication, currency duplication. Those are the 2 big ones. Again, if you're doing a 16.5 map, the div cards, if you've scried good div cards, could be a good duplication mod as well. Quantity is obviously good. Rarity's not as big of a deal. And then, whatever, div card, monster mods, currency monster mods. Hopefully you'll get a Divine Orb Shrine and get more than 0 Divine Orbs out of it. Be doing better than me this league. So that's pretty much it, right? It's a very generic strategy, but I'm really enjoying it. It's super simple. That's the nice salesman-y pitch for it. It's elegant in its simplicity. You just mow down walls of generic enemies, and that's all you do. Brain off, Scarabs engaged. I love it. I also think that the passive tree in this strategy is just a great baseline for any kind of generic farming setup. You can definitely tweak it slightly if you wanted to run like strong boxes. That was kind of the first thing that came to mind instead of doing shrines, doing strong boxes, just so you're getting more ambush Scarabs by running strong boxes in the map device. I think that could work really well. The only real issue I have with it is just like you get native magic monsters out of shrines and you don't out of strong boxes, and that ultimately was like what led me to do the strategy that that we have in this video. In any case, this is like a very good basic setup, just a starting point for pretty much anything else that's juicy. All right, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord, and say hello to me in Sunset if you haven't already. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us so we can keep making more PoE content, become a channel member as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.